today in the afternoon, now we will be discussing about penetration testing tools. Especially, we will be considering Metasploit. I hope many of you have already been introduced to what is penetration testing. So penetration testing is a testing strategy, a security testing strategy, in which you will do a role play. So basically, you will try to act as an ethical hacker or a hacker, and you will try to use all possible means to identify if the system can be compromised by some mechanism. Okay, so you will try to make use of many tools, and you will try to see if the system that you are trying to secure is secured enough, or it can be compromised in some mechanism. So if it can be compromised, then what is that mechanism through which you are able to compromise? That will be communicated to the security designer or the system designer who has, and it is their responsibility to fix up the vulnerability that has been exposed. So this is an ongoing process. Usually, whenever there is a system that has to be commissioned, it is usually to process to carry out the penetration testing, and then the system will be released. And once it is released onto the network as well, once the system has gone live, it is a practice that this penetration testing is carried out at regular intervals. Every week, this will be scheduled on very critical components. It might be scheduled on a daily basis, and non less critical components, it could be carried out at a week and a month, and things like that. So this is an ongoing process which will try to identify if there are any further bugs that have been introduced and further vulnerabilities that have surfaced after the system has gone live or into production as well. Okay, so the tool that we'll be discussing today is called as Metasploit. So Metasploit is again an open source framework. So basically, it is a framework in which you can actually write your own plugins and write your own exploits to see if the exploitation can be done by using the vulnerabilities. So it gives a general framework through which you can do the penetration testing. Now, this is the documentation of the Metasploit framework itself, which I'm currently displaying, which gives an introduction into the framework. So as you can see, the title says use offense to inform the defense. So this is what is called as penetration testing. You will try to offensively hack the system. So you will basically try to role play a hacker who is trying to attack the system. You will try to attack the system and ensure that you will not be able to attack the system with measures that are in place. So if you're still be able to access the system or attack the system, and that loophole has to be. So that is what it says, use offense to and find the flaws before the bad guys do. Okay, so this is the tool which is used by ethical hackers and security designers to test their systems before the system is put on production or which goes on live. Of course, this is the original intent with which the tool has been designed, and it is available in the open source, which can be downloaded by anyone and can be used. This also happens to be used by hackers and attackers who extensively make use of this tool for hacking many of the websites in real world and many of the servers in real world. Okay. So when you say penetration testing, if you ask anyone who is doing penetration testing on a regular basis, then if you just ask him what are the kind of tools that he'll be using, these are some of the tools that he'll mention. One of the major tools is the Metasploit framework itself, which we'll be looking at later. The other such tools include the information gathering tools. Specifically, I hope Mr. Muralidharan has introduced about the various network vulnerability scanners and the various web application vulnerability scanners and other things which have been used by many of the security designers. So tools like Nmap and other things can reveal the information about a particular machine or the about the vulnerable ports or the vulnerable network points which are available in a particular system can be identified by using some of the basic tools like Nmap and other network utilities. So once you identify that a particular port is open or a particular service is available on a particular machine, then the next step is to identify how to exploit that particular vulnerability. Now, this is exactly the same process which I was describing early in the morning also. There are some kind of attacks. Uh, Technically, they are not attacks, probably information gathering steps, even in virtualization, called as virtualization detection. So once you identify that the targeted machine is virtualized, then you will proceed with carrying out specialized attacks for targeting that system. Similarly, even in case of penetration testing, the first step is to identify or to gather the information from the targeted system. And how do the attackers generally carry out an attack online? There are two approaches. Now, one of the approaches with the attackers is to do a random scan on the internet to see which are all the machines available and how to target them. Right. So you I mean, preferably what they do is they will write a script to give a starting IP range and then an ending IP range, and to identify which are all the IP addresses available in this particular range that can be targeted. Okay. Now these scripts will be running all through the day, and most of the things will be automated. So all the most of the attack mechanisms are all automated because it is impossible actually to specifically attack one machine. Now, even if you want to attack one particular machine, and with all the security measures that are in place in the modern day, it is very difficult to attack a particular machine and get an access into that machine. So unless you try to find out a loophole which is already known, it's very difficult to attack a fully secure machine. Okay. Now, to identify the loophole itself is a big process. Okay. Now, how to identify the loophole? There will be a standard set of usual procedures which will be followed in particular orders. Now, again, what is that order? It again depends on the hacker. Okay. What is the kind of attack that he wants to carry out? It also depends on that. For example, it might be very easy to cause denial of service attacks. Okay. If you just attack some particular component and if you make it unavailable, then it is like cutting a wire. Okay. So if you just cut the wire to a CCTV cam or a particular camera device or into a network communication device, then the communication will stop, right? Very similar to that, if you want to just cause a denial of service attack, it might be much simpler. Whereas if you are interested in stealing the data, and if you want to do it in a stealthy manner, that means if you want to go unnoticed, then he might have to rely upon much more sophisticated mechanisms for carrying out such attacks. So the order in which he has to design or devise these strategies will also be completely different. So the usual approach what they follow is the hackers or the attackers will try to write scripts for automating most of these things. So the script will automatically keep scanning many of the IPs. Now, let us say that there is a particular IP, one particular IP which is available in the public domain, right? Now that IP will be scanned for what are all the possible vulnerabilities in that server. Now the usual way in which they will try to scan is they will try to find out what is the web server that is running, because IP in the sense usually it will try to, I mean, people will try to target the web applications. Now, if at all, if there are any other ports that are also available on that particular server, then it becomes an additional attack surface. I mean, all of these additional ports can pose different challenges, I mean, different opportunities for the hackers to gain access into. So it is always a good practice that if you are running if you're putting any server onto the internet, and if it is running only a limited set of applications, it is always a better practice that all the other ports have to be closed by the firewall, or the services need not be started at all. For example, let's say that there is a server which is running a web application. Now, the web server has to listen on some particular port, let's say 80, port 80, and it is sufficient only if port 80 is allowed, right? Now, you might have to do some file transfer into that web server from remotely from your location onto the web server. For that, you might have enabled the FTP service, or you might have want to log into that system. So for that, you might have enabled the RSH and the SSH ports. So all the number of ports that you keep open on any remote server, they present an opportunity for the hacker to gain access into the system. So it's always the best practice to close as many number of ports as possible and keep open only the very required ports. In fact, that is the practice that is followed in the standard security procedure as well. Okay. So if you see here, it also mentions about two tools, namely Nessus and Internet Security Scanner. I think at least one of the persons till now has mentioned both of these tools. Nessus is again a vulnerability scanner. Nessus has been commercial as of now. There is support also available, but there is an open source version also, which is free to download and which is free to for doing vulnerability scanning at the application level, as well as some of the web application vulnerabilities also could be detected using the Nessus tool. Similarly, the Internet Security Scanner mainly tries to carry out a vulnerability analysis on the web applications. And apart from that, there have been many tools which have been introduced, I think, in the previous sessions for carrying out a web vulnerability scanning, network scanning, and things like that. So these are all the initial tools that will be used for gathering the information and to find out if a vulnerability exists. Okay, now for example, if you take Nessus, so Nessus will try to see what are all the different applications that are installed on the server, and if an application is installed, what is the configuration, the application configuration that has been enabled for that particular software. For example, let's say that there is an Apache web server that has been installed. So Apache web server, what are all the different configurations that are enabled for this web server? Because certain set of combinations are known to be very vulnerable. Okay, so by default, many things will with some preset configurations. So many of the people will not even bother to change the configurations for many software. Default configuration, there could be many backdoors and there could be many opportunities for the hackers to get an access into the system. So things like the tools like Nessus and the ISS, they try to identify these kind of vulnerabilities and they try to report to the user who is trying to do the audit or the analysis. So in this case, Nessus will tell that a particular and many versions of the software themselves have been identified as vulnerable. For example, if you take the FTP, VSFTP daemon, which will be trying to see at a later stage now. Now there is a particular version of that called as 2.3.4. So that version has been known to have significant vulnerabilities. So if you are running 2.3.4 FTP daemon on your machine, VSFTP daemon, then Nessus will immediately complain, telling that there is a vulnerability available in this software. It has to be upgraded or it has to be replaced. Okay, so then it becomes the responsibility of the system administrator, to apply a suitable patch so that this vulnerability will be taken care of, or if any other alternative can be found for this software or this particular service. Okay, so these tools will just do a vulnerability analysis and they give a report, but they do not allow you to actually get an access into the system or to exploit the vulnerability. What they could do is, the Nessus or any other vulnerability scanner will try to do is, they will tell that this daemon, the VSFTP daemon, is vulnerable. This version of VSFTP daemon is vulnerable for these reasons. So it will tell that a person can remotely execute a code or it can remotely connect through the open port. So these are the kind of warnings and the suggestions that the Nessus tool will give. Whereas, whether it is really possible to exploit using that vulnerability and how to exploit using that vulnerability, that can be done using the Metasploit framework. So the Metasploit framework is used for actually exploiting the known vulnerabilities. Okay. Now, before we actually go into that tool, I was explaining about the vulnerability database as such. So this is the National Vulnerability Database, or the NVD, which might have come up in the discussions during the previous sessions as well. So this is being maintained by one of the US standards organization called as NIST, the US statutory body which is responsible for maintaining these standards across various domains. Now, the National Vulnerability Database maintains a list of all the known vulnerabilities across the major software components. So anything that comes into the public domain is usually recorded in this particular database, and it is given an identifier or an ID. Okay, so it is called as a vulnerability ID, which usually starts with CVE and something. Okay, so CVE stands for the vulnerability system, the ranking system and the scoring system that this National Vulnerability Database employs. So the CVE system is usually used for assigning an identifier for every vulnerability that has been identified. And then it will also have the identifier itself will also have the year in which the vulnerability has surfaced up, and then it will also have the corresponding identifier ID for this vulnerability. So once this ID has been attached, so from now onwards, any communication that has to happen will include this as the reference ID. So anyone who mentions this vulnerability will know that the discussion is happening regarding this vulnerability. So if somebody develops a patch, or if somebody tries to get an attempt, tries to gain an access using this vulnerability, then it will be told that this vulnerability has been exploited for carrying out this attack, or this patch has been developed against this vulnerability, right? Okay, now if you go to this NVD website, so you will have an option for search. Okay, so this is the search option. Now, what you want to search, there are of course various products and checklists also that are published by this NVD. So we are interested in searching the vulnerabilities. So you can click vulnerabilities or CVE. So now this gives you an interface for searching the vulnerabilities based on some keywords or some component names, whatever you know. Now, for example, let us say that we were interested in finding the vulnerabilities in a particular hypervisor. We talked about multiple hypervisors in the morning session, the Xen hypervisor, KVM, and then VMware, Hyper-V, all of these hypervisors we talked about. So let's say that we want to search what are all the vulnerabilities that are available for the Xen hypervisor. You can just give that keyword here and click the search button. Of course, there is an advanced search also, which will include many fields. So you can filter out the date range of when the vulnerability was reported. All these things you can do. Okay. Now, otherwise, you can just give a keyword and then search. So you can also limit the time frame if you want to search only the latest vulnerabilities and things like that. Okay. So as you can see, there are so many records. It says 544 matching records have been listed, which means to say that this hypervisor alone, Xen hypervisor alone, has 544 vulnerabilities that are listed. As you can see, it has been organized into so many pages here, right? And of course, you can sort based on the latest reported vulnerabilities and things like that. So the point I'm trying to drive is, as you can see, this vulnerability if you see, it says CVE and 2020. Okay, so which means to say that this has been reported in 2020. So as recently as in August 2020, this kind of vulnerability has been reported in the Xen hypervisor. And it also gives the scoring system. Now there are two different scoring systems. The latest one is 3.1, and the previous one, which was used for quite a long time, is 2.0. So for backward compatibility purposes, the scores are given in both the scoring systems. Anyway, in the new scoring system itself, as you can see, it says that this vulnerability that has been discovered is highly critical in nature. So it is 9.8. It is having a severity score of 9.8, 10 being the maximum. So 9.8, it says, which means to say that it is very critical. Okay, so if you open this link, then it will give the additional description of that particular vulnerability itself. Okay, so it says which is the version of that component. So in this case, Xen mobile server 10.12 version is affected, and which are all the other versions that are affected with this one. Okay, and if the corresponding software vendor himself has identified this bug, then there will also be a link to that particular information from the vendor himself. Okay, and it also says, so vendor advisory, which means to say that the vendor himself has identified that there is a bug, and there is a possibility that there is also a patch available for this particular vulnerability. Okay, so if there are many vulnerabilities which do not have the patches available, 0-day vulnerabilities, and for many vulnerabilities for which you do not have the patches available, then you will still have the vendor advisories available, which will allow you to take a cautious decision whether to use the software or not, right? And then it says what is the kind of bug, or what is the kind of vulnerability. So here it says incorrect authorization. So this can lead to, or this vulnerability can be exploited by incorrect authorization, and this vulnerability also exposed dangerous methods or functions. So if you usually expose dangerous methods or functions, people can get an access into this system, and they can try to run their own code and execute their own codes to gain the access to the entire system. And it also shows the affected configurations, okay, which are all the different versions that have been affected, right? So this is the kind of information that is available in the vulnerability database. So for any vulnerability that is usually known in the public domain, so there will be a CVE available. So this CVE number can be used for referring to that particular vulnerability. Okay. Now, similar to this, you can search for any hypervisors or any of the components that you are interested in. So as you can see, even for KVM, even in 2020, there have been many bugs disputed. I mean, many bugs that have been reported, right? So that is exactly the point that I was trying to explain in the morning also. The hypervisor, since it is a software component, so and many features do get added from time to time based on the advancements in the hardware and the technology as well. So all these things can lead to different bugs that can surface at different points of time. So many bugs do exist in the hypervisors as well as the other software components that are used in clouds, and these could be some of the entry points through which the hackers can gain access into the virtual machine or into the host itself. So this is a bug in the hypervisor, which means to say that if you gain an access into the hypervisor or from the VM, you could make use of these kind of vulnerabilities to gain an access into the hypervisor or into the system itself. These are all the different things that have been listed against the KVM hypervisor. So many things about the VMware ESXi. ESXi happens to be the hypervisor which could be used along with the hardware assisted virtualization features. So as you can see, even this hypervisor has many of the bugs reported. And if you just give a thorough check at the various software available in the vulnerability database, the open source software are usually reported in a much higher frequency because many people would try to access it and try to report the found vulnerabilities. Whereas in proprietary software such as the Hyper-V or the VMware, even if the company themselves, if they detect any vulnerability, then there is a chance that the vulnerability does not get reported publicly and the patch might be available in the next version of that particular software. Okay, so such things could happen, because of which the proprietary software might have a very few listings when compared to the open source software in the vulnerability database. Okay. Yeah. So coming back to the uh, penetration testing and the Metasploit project. So the Metasploit project, as I told, is a framework which can give useful information to the people who want to perform penetration testing, IDS signature development, and the research on the exploits. Okay, so if somebody is involved in developing an intrusion detection system, uh, as probably in the previous discussions it would have mentioned, uh, it would have been mentioned on how to design an IDS and what is the functionality of IDS. So the IDS usually works based on signatures, something called as signatures. Signatures are nothing but patterns. Okay, so if a particular pattern is identified, then there are chances that this kind of pattern could easily lead to a particular attack. Okay, so whenever there is a pattern occurring, then the IDS mechanisms or the IDS tools will usually try to alert the user or stop the system from proceeding from then onwards. So such kind of signature development for the IDS tools, and then carry out the penetration testing. All these things can be done using the Metasploit framework. So there is a uh, detailed description of how to install the framework on different platforms, Windows as well as Linux, and how to carry out the actual exploit analysis and things like that. Okay, so you can just go through this document. This document is also available on the internet itself. So if you just say Metasploit framework, it will take you to the Metasploit website, and this document is available from the Metasploit website itself. Okay. So now we will actually see the demo of this Metasploit framework. Now, in order to show the demo, I'm using this Oracle VM VirtualBox. Now, this is again one of the hypervisors that is available on Windows system, called as the VirtualBox. Okay. Now, VirtualBox will allow you to run the create and run the VMs very similar to the any other hypervisors. Now, in this case, I have created two different VMs. One is the VM. Now, what is the VM? Please excuse me. I'll just come in a moment.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry for the disturbance, ma'am. I
Yeah,
suddenly
it's
got
okay.
one emergency call. Yes.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So let us continue. So this is the tool with which you can actually try to create the VMs and also try to run. So in this case, I am having two different VMs. One is the attacker VM, so which will try to carry out the attack. The other one is the attacked VM. So the first VM, which is called as Metasploit, is actually the attacked VM. Okay, so this is the target VM or the attacked VM. And now there is another VM called as Kali Linux here, which is the attacker VM. So I think Kali Linux has also been introduced in the previous session. So Kali Linux is a popular Linux distribution which will comprise of many of the tools that will be used for security testing. Okay, security and vulnerability analysis. Many tools that will be required, they will all be combined into one Linux distribution, and it is available under Kali Linux. So I think the various tools available in Kali Linux have also been introduced. So now this is the VM which is running Kali Linux. Okay, so I am trying to log in to this system. Right now, as you can see, there are many applications available in Kali Linux, grouped under multiple categories for information gathering, vulnerability analysis, web application analysis, to carry out password attacks, database assessment, database vulnerability analysis, to carry out forensics, and many such tools. Now, what we are interested is with this category, information gathering tools, right? So specifically, we will be interested with this tool called as Nmap. Okay, so Nmap is a tool which can be used for gathering some information about the network ports that are open in a particular machine. Okay, and then we will also have the exploitation tools which will contain the Metasploit itself. Okay, so very similar to Metasploit, there are other tools also available in this category, but we'll be looking at this tool which comprises a big family of mechanisms that could be used for carrying out penetration testing. Okay. Okay, now the other VM that we will be making use of is just a Linux machine which is having some kind of vulnerabilities, right? So this is a typical Linux VM, Debian installation, Debian Linux installation, which will have which is having some kind of vulnerability. So for the sake of demonstration, we make use of this VM. Now here we will say that let us say that I want to find out the IP address of this machine. So since this is a Linux machine, I will use the command ifconfig to find out what is the IP address of this machine. So as you can see, it will show what is the IP address of this machine. So here it is telling that the IP address is 192.168.56 and 101. Okay, so this is the IP address of the machine. So if you want to connect to this machine, or hello.
Excuse me, sir. So your screen is not fully visible.
Hello.
Hello, sir. Your screen is not fully visible.
Okay, what is visible? Is this visible now?
No. It's right now. It's right, sir.
Okay. Okay, so this is the IP address that we want to target now: 192.168.56 and 101. Right. So this is the IP that we want to target. Now the first step is to identify what are all the ports that are open in this machine. Okay, so if there are some vulnerable ports that are available, then we will try to target those particular ports. Okay, for doing that, we will make use of the Nmap tool available in the Kali Linux. Okay, now this is the other VM. So I am trying to do a scan from the other VM to find out what are all the ports that are available in the targeted machine. So in this case, I will say Nmap. I want to open Nmap. Okay, so it says some of the examples that you could use, some options that you could use for carrying out the Nmap scan. So I'll just say Nmap and then -v for verbose, which will 192.168.56.101. So this is the machine that I want to scan. So as you can see, it will start the scan. So it will take some time for scanning. Yes. So it has completed the scan as of now, as you can see. So it is telling that these are all the ports that have been kept open, right? So it has discovered that all these ports are open. So as you can see, so many ports are open. This is the thing which I was mentioning earlier. So the number of ports, if it increases, the number of open ports, if it increases, then there is a likely chance that the system will be used for attacking. So you should keep only minimal number of ports open if you want to keep your system secure, right? Now there's another option with Nmap. When you say Nmap -va, then it will try to do a service scan also for the corresponding open ports. So it will give additional information about the services that are running on those particular ports. Yes. So as you can see, it has given a detailed report on all the various ports that have been opened. So it is telling that all these different ports are open, the port numbers and the protocol that is used for communication. So in this case, all of them are TCP ports that are open, right? And then it will start doing the analysis on every port that is open. So in this case, the first port identified is port number 21, TCP port, and the service that is listening here is FTP. Okay, so here it says FTP is the protocol that is used, the service that is used for this particular port, and which is the daemon that is making use of this service. So the service is coming from this daemon, namely VSFTPD with this particular version number 2.3.4. Okay, so this entire information is available, and after this, it will try to do some known vulnerabilities for FTP. So for FTP, usually you should disable anonymous FTP login. So if you enable it, then there are chances that the attackers might try to attack your system using this mechanism. So in this case, it will try to see if the anonymous FTP login is allowed. It says it is allowed, right? And then when you try to log in, what is the response that you get from the system. So all of these things will be displayed. Similarly, the next port SSH, then some information about the host key of that particular machine. Similarly, for Telnet, then SMTP, all the services that have been listed, everything will be shown on the remote machine. So as you can see, it gives a wealth of information for the attacker. Take this example. It says that port 80 is open for the HTTP service, and the daemon that is making use of this service is Apache HTTPD. So this is the name of the daemon or the software process which is running, right? So this software is making use of HTTPD daemon. The HTTPD daemon is making use of this port 80. And what is the version of this particular software? 2.2.8, right? Now, why is this important? As we have already seen in the National Vulnerability Database. So if you say HTTPD 2.2.8 or Apache 2.2.8 and do a search, then it will list all the known vulnerabilities against that particular software component, right? So if the hacker knows that information that this machine is running Apache 2.2.8 and there is already a known vulnerability for this particular software version, so it becomes very easy for him to use that known vulnerability and to hack into the system. Okay, so that is the reason these information gathering tools are also quite dangerous, and using this information, the hacker will try to gather as much of information as possible. Okay, and it also gives the information about the operating system. So as you can see here, it says that it is Ubuntu. It is running a Linux distribution. So all this information will be available to the end hacker. So using this information, again, he will try to refine the attack strategy itself. Okay. And the Samba daemons, which I was mentioning earlier also, the SMB daemons usually used for the file sharing between Windows and Linux systems. So this is again one of the vulnerable daemons which have been used extensively by many of the servers. And then you can also see that there is one MySQL daemon which is listening at 3306 port. So MySQL, you know, is the popular open source database service. So this daemon is listening at 3306 port. So that port is also open. Okay. And then there is Apache Tomcat, which is available at 8180. Apache JServe at 8009. So like this, it will try to list all the possible all the ports that are open and which could be vulnerable for trying to gain access into the system.
Sir, Samba is used to file sharing between Windows and
Linux.
Windows and Unix systems. Unix or Linux systems. Yeah. Okay, so now we got to know that these are all the different ports that are open. Now,
Sir,
let us
one
say,
question.
hello?
Sir, one question.
Yes, sir.
As you said, so that majority of the example is attack through known vulnerabilities into famous daemons that is being used by attackers. So sometimes it also happens that some softwares open some ports and they don't close it on uninstalling it. So what kind of attack is possible if some ports are open and
yeah, that is what we will see in a short while from now. So we will see that these are all the different ports that are open. Now, using these ports, what the attacker can do, that is what we will try to see now. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So these are the different ports that has been listed as opened, right? So any server which is involved in network communication will obviously have many ports that are open, because whenever a server and a client, the sockets have to communicate, they need the ports to be open. Only when the ports are opened, they can be communicating between each other. But this itself, this port, these open ports themselves can be used for exploitation. That is the reason only the required ports have to be kept open. Otherwise, all the ports have to be closed in the firewall, or the services themselves should not be started. For example, if I don't use the database in the system as of now, then it is better that I shut down the MySQL service. Similarly, I'm not using Tomcat for anything, then it is better that I shut down the Tomcat and free up this particular port, right? Otherwise, just by keeping open ports, unused open ports, there are chances that the likelihood of exploitation will be increasing. Okay, now this is what we gained the information. Now, as you can see, the first port that we saw, which said that the port number 21 is opened for FTP, right? Now, port 20 and 21 is usually reserved for the FTP purposes. Most of you know that. One is for the control channel and the other one is for the data channel. Anyhow, now we have a daemon called as VSFTPD. Now, this is one of the software which gives the FTP service, the standard FTP services, through which you can copy the files from one machine to another. So that is the reason we are running this FTP server on our machine, right? Okay. Now let us see. Now that we know that VSFTPD daemon is installed on this machine with the version 2.3.4, right? Now, what would a typical hacker do is try to gather the information like this, okay, and then see if there are any vulnerabilities already available. So let us go back to this vulnerability database and try to do a search based on this daemon. So I'll see if any vulnerability already exists for VSFTPD. So as you can see, this first entry VSFTPD is for 2.3.4, downloaded between some dates, contains a backdoor which can open a shell on port 6200 with the TCP protocol. Okay, so there is already a vulnerability which is known, right? So similarly, these are the vulnerabilities which are known to the general public. So the vulnerability database includes all the information that is available in the public domain. Now the hackers themselves do have darknet. Probably you'll be knowing about all these things. So they do have darknets and they do have their own vulnerability databases which have supplemental information other than what the standard databases do have. Okay. In addition to this information, they might also have additional information which is not generally available in the public domain. Okay. Anyway, this information alone says that it is a critical vulnerability which could be used for opening a shell on the remote machine. Okay. Now, let us come back to the Kali Linux machine. So using Nmap, we have identified the ports and we have seen that VSFTPD daemon is running on port 21. Now let us go to the exploitation tools and then start the Metasploit framework.
Sir, when you install this Metasploit framework, then it is added to this Kali 9x or it is already present?
In Kali Linux, if you download, then it will already be available.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, so this Metasploit has started. Okay, so now this is the console available with Metasploit. Console is like a terminal with which you can issue many commands. Okay, so if you say help, then it will list all the commands that are available and what are all the activities that you can do with this framework. Okay, so if you say banner, then it will display one beautiful banner, a random banner that is available with Metasploit. So like this, all the descriptions about the various commands will be given in the help menu. Now, what we will be interested is to see what are all the different exploits that are already available. Now, this is a framework I told, so it will allow you to write your own exploit and try to do the testing by using the framework. So you can write your own exploit. If you are capable of writing your own exploit, then you can very well write your own exploit and probably publish it in the public domain so that others can also make use of it. Or when you download the Metasploit, you can some of the exploits which are already known, they will come bundled together with the tool itself. Okay, so you can make use of these exploits to see if these exploits are still available in the machine that you are targeting with, right? So as and when new vulnerabilities are discovered, there will be many enthusiasts who will also develop the Metasploit exploit and they will publish it online. Okay, so you can download that exploit and also populate into your own database here. Now, if you say show exploits, then it will try to display all the known exploits that are available in the current database. It might take some time because there is a huge list of exploits that will be available with the database. Anyway, probably we can also do a search based on the keyword that we are interested with. So if you say search and the keyword, okay, so it will display all the exploits that are available in the current database, right? So we saw that there is a daemon called as VSFTPD. And if we want to see in our Metasploit, if there is any exploit, then I'll say search VSFTPD and it is displaying there is one exploit already available which can target the version 2.3.4. Now this is the exact version that we are also having, right? And it will also display the rank of that particular exploit. So whether this exploit will work on all the available systems or only on certain systems, or whether it will not work at all, maybe probably in a very few systems, 1 or 2 systems only, this exploit has been tried out. Okay, so this entire description will be made available with the rank. So here it says excellent, which means to say that this exploit works on most of the systems, on a majority of the systems which is running VSFTPD version 2.3.4. Okay. So here we will now say that we want to use this exploit or we want to run this exploit. So in order to do that, this is the name of the exploit. This entire thing is the name of the exploit. So I will copy this name and then I'll say use this exploit. Okay. So when I say use this exploit, then you can see that the console prompt has changed to that exploit, which means to say that you are currently under this exploit's context, right? So now I'll say show options. Okay, so what is this? This will show what are all the different options available for running this exploit or for carrying out this attack. Okay. So it says that there are two options available for this exploit. One is called as the rhost and the other one is called the rport. So what is rhost? Rhost stands for the remote host, the IP address of the remote host that you want to exploit. Okay, which is running the VSFTPD backdoor. I mean, which is running the VSFTPD daemon. So that is what the description says, the target address range or the CIDR identifier of the remote host. Then the port which has to be targeted. So if the daemon, the FTP daemon is started on a non-standard port of 21, then you can mention that using this option. So by default, the current setting is already set to 21, which means to say that by default, the FTP daemon is supposed to run on 21 and you can try to exploit that. Otherwise, you can just set this variable to something else on which the actual daemon is running. So now in our case, we have to set this option, rhost option, to indicate that we want to target a machine with a particular IP address. So in our case, the IP address we have already seen. So we will say set this set rhost to 192.168. So it is 56.101. 56.101. Okay. Okay. So now again, if we say show options, the same command which we tried earlier. So it will show that rhost has a current setting of 192.168.56 and 1 down, and the port as 21, right? So these are the only two options available for this exploit. Like this, every exploit will have different options based on the kind of attack or the kind of exploit that we are currently working with, right? Now, okay, so we have set both the options. So the next step is to carry out the exploit or run the exploit. So in order to run the exploit, you can just say run or use the word exploit itself. Okay, both will do the same thing. So you can just say run, and then it will try to exploit using the things that we have supplied here. Okay, so it has done something. We will see what it has done. So here you can see the sequence of messages that have been exchanged between this machine and the remote machine. So it says 56.101 21 port 21. It says banner 220. So whenever FTP daemon is initially contacted, it will display a banner. Okay, banner is something like a message which is displayed initially, right? Just like what the banner we saw for Metasploit, very similar to that introductory message which is displayed. So this is the message that we have got from the other system, and it also says the version of the FTP software, and then it says please specify the username and the password. So the remote machine will expect the username and the password, right? Okay. So now this is the other sequence of message that it has got, the username, and then it is expecting the password. Now, after using this default username and password combination, then it says that the backdoor service has been spawned. Okay, for the user root and the group root, right? And then it says a shell has been found, and then the command shell has been opened. Okay, so it says for the root user, which also has the group set as root, the root will also have the UID and the GID set to 0. So this is usually reserved for the root user, right? Okay. For the root user, it has found out a shell. You all know what is a shell in the Linux context, right? So using the shell, you can execute any commands, right? So what it says is it has successfully exploited this vulnerability, and it is able to open a command shell for the user, right? So this is the communication channel. So the command shell has been opened on the remote machine 56.101 at a port 6200, right? On the local machine, this is the outgoing port, right? Okay. Now, as you can see, it is so powerful that the command shell itself is available. It has been opened and it is waiting over here. You may not be able to see the command prompt, but we are at the command prompt of the system, right? Now, once you get the command prompt of the entire shell, it is like getting access to the entire system. You can do anything that you want. Now, let's say that I will give a ls command. Okay. So you can see that the output of the ls command is listed over here. What is this output? This is the directory listing of the remote machine. Let me go to, now this is the actual VM, the remote machine VM. I will go to the topmost level directory. Then if I give ls, you can see that these are the directories that are available in the topmost level for the root user. The same directories are being listed over here. So the output is actually coming from the remote machine, right? Now, as I told, once you gain access to the shell, or once you get the access to the shell, you have total control of the entire machine, and that too you have logged in as root user, which means to say that this entire machine is available for you to make use of. You can just say power off or reboot command, and then the entire system will go for a shutdown. Okay, so that will result in a denial of service completely. So the entire system can be brought down as such. Or otherwise, if you want to carry out some other interesting things, if you want to see what is the kind of data that this system is having, if you want to copy the data, all these things can be done very easily. Now let's say I want to see what are all the so etc password is the file on Linux systems which will contain the information about the various users on that system. Okay, so you can see that it is listing all the users that are available in this system, right? And then there is something called as etc shadow, which will maintain the passwords of the various users, okay, in a shadow format. So even that file is available. So as you can see, the salted passwords are also available. So if you get access to this file, it is very easy for many of the password scanners to get the passwords from the file. Okay, so you can just copy this file now because you are having access to the entire machine. You just use the cp command and copy this file to any other location that you want to, and then use any scanners. In fact, if you see this Kali Linux itself, there is a separate category of applications called as password attacks. Okay, now there are many tools available famous ones also, Hashcat and John and Encrack and things like that. So many of these tools can be really effective in cracking the passwords with the available databases, the standard word list. Now there is again, yeah, in this category itself, as you can see, there is something called as a word list in the bottommost layer, the bottommost items. Okay, so this is again a default list of words that will be given. If anyone has used a password cracker, or if anyone has tried guessing the passwords, you might be knowing that most of these password crackers will require you to submit a password database file. Okay? So what is this? This database file will contain the list of passwords, the probable passwords that the system has to search for. Otherwise, doing a brute force search would be very time consuming. So in order to limit the search space of the brute force attack, usually most of these password crackers will rely upon something called as a word list or a password database. So by default, when you download the Metasploit or the Kali Linux framework itself, there will be many standard word lists available. So you can see here that there are many lists available. Just let's take one example. There is one word list available here, which is maintained for SQL map. Like this, there are many word lists available. See, as you can see, this contains all the probable list of passwords that are usually encountered. Okay, so this is usually the way in which the password crackers will work. Okay, now you can see I have already scrolled in 457 lines, and then still it is showing it is only 0%. So it's a huge list. Probably if you see with WC, yeah, so these many entries are available in this password file itself. So like this, there are so many files available, right? So the password crackers can search all these different password databases and try to find out if the password is matching with any of these passwords which is already existing in the databases, right? Now this is one of the important things why you should not set a weak password for any website online, right? Now you might think that the website that you are trying to create a username and password, that might not have any sensitive information, right? So it might just be an online quiz or some gaming website or something like that. Okay, so you might feel that I am not storing any of my financial details into this website, so it doesn't matter if I set a weak password or any password as such. Okay, now what will happen is, now if such a website is hacked, most of the hacking attempts do usually carry out like this. So if any of the websites do get hacked, one of the most important things that the hackers will try to steal is this username and password combinations. Okay, now the username and password combination that is stored in one particular website, it will be copied and they will populate it into this database, the database that they are having, the hackers database. They will try to populate this into their database. Now what is the use of this? The use of this is the website that has been targeted, that gaming website or that quiz website, may not be of much interest to the hacker also, but the most useful information is the username and password combination that you have entered over there. It is very likely that the same username and password will be used in websites which are having much critical information and much sensitive information. Okay, so it is a general tendency of most of the users that they use the same username and password combinations on across all the websites, right? So if the same username and password is available, then there is a very high chance that the same user has used the same username and password on his banking website or on his credit card website or any other website through which he can actually make out some gains. Okay, so it becomes very easy for him to gain the access about these usernames and passwords and populate it into the database. So once your username or password comes into the database of the hacker, then it is very easy. The password tool will immediately flag it, telling that this particular combination is working, and you can go ahead with the exploit. Right? In fact, on the dark web or on the dark net, people do sell this password databases itself for huge money. Okay, the password combinations have a very big value because the username and passwords, if they try to steal from databases, from websites, they can be used for accessing or they can be used for hacking other critical databases which are of very high value. So the databases themselves, the password databases themselves, the list of password combinations and the user name combinations, that itself will be sold at very premium prices on the darknet. Anyhow, so yeah, so you can see that there are many word lists available with the Kali Linux distribution itself, and then you can also use the many of the password attacking the John the Ripper or the Hashcat or Ncrack or any of these tools to see if the passwords can be matched. In fact, many of these password cracking tools themselves are so sophisticated that they can be highly parallelized in nature because they're mostly brute force in nature and they're completely independent between successive runs. So now let's say that your password list itself is having huge number of entries like what we saw over here. Now let's say that if it is having some, this has 1,40,000 entries, I guess, right? Yeah, or 14 lakhs. Yeah, so this file itself has 14 lakh entries. So if it has to be sequentially checked for every 14 lakh entries, then it might take a longer time. So instead of this, the tool itself can run in parallel, which means to say that the password database can be split across multiple chunks, and each of these chunks can be executed in parallel, can be searched in parallel. Okay, and then there are multiple ports available to these password crackers. Some of these scanners can also work on modern day GPU devices. So if you know, there has been a trend in making use of the graphical processors, the GPU devices for doing general purpose computations, which is called a GPU computations. So these, many of the password cracking tools have also been enabled on GPUs because the GPUs have multiple cores available in the hardware when compared to the standard processors. So this is an embarrassingly parallel application that we are talking about here. So as many number of computing cores are available with me, I can just split the task available at hand, and all these processors can execute simultaneously so that the result will be got very soon. Okay, so there is very less interdependency between the tasks that are available in such an application. So for such applications, the number of cores, if they are available, if the more number of cores are available, then obviously the task can be completed much faster when compared to a standard serial task, or when compared to a task which is having multiple dependencies. So that is the reason most of these password crackers have also been enabled on GPUs, which if you employ can return the results in a much faster manner. So on a standard machine, the searching of 14 lakh records might take probably 2 to 3 minutes on a modern day processor. But if you can employ the GPUs and combine them, then within a matter of a few seconds or even within a second itself, the entire search could be done in parallel and the password could be cracked, right? So the sophistication is also available at the hacker end. So we should not underestimate the powers available at the hacking end, and the tools that are available at the hacking end as well. Okay, so that was with the the kind of passwords that you could try to get from the shell. So coming back to the terminal of Metasploit, we are still with the command shell that has been opened by exploiting the vulnerability in the VSFTPD daemon, right? So I just showed you how the shadow password file can be accessed. Usually it is very sensitive. This file is very sensitive. Only the root user will be allowed to read or write into this particular file. A normal user will not be even allowed to read this file on a standard system. But since we have gained access as a root user, we are able to see what is the shadow password file on this machine. So as I already told, once you gain access to the shell, then you can just issue any command that you want access to control this system. So if you just reboot or power off, then the entire system will be shut down. Or if you want to shut down any particular service, or if you want to tamper the data, if you want to change anything in the database, all these things can be done because you are already available in the command prompt. Okay. So we saw that this machine is also having MySQL, right? So you can see that usually the MySQL database will create a directory called as var-lib-mysql, and it will store all the information in this directory. So I'm able to traverse to this directory, and there's also something called as MySQL, which is the key directory. And you can go into this directory and change all the permissions and modify any contents that you want. All these things can be done as well. Right? So now when I say exit, I have exited from the command shell session of this particular remote machine. Okay. Now, other than this, when you are at the command prompt on the remote machine, you can create a user also. Because you will not be allowed to access to this machine if you log out, right? Again, you have to use the same exploit. So instead of that, what you can do is you can create your own user, and from now onwards, you can start using that username for logging into the system. And if you want to populate some data, if you want to hack into some of the directories, all these things can be done if you have a user account on this machine, and if you give escalated privileges for that particular user, right? So once you gain access through the command prompt, if a command shell can be opened, then you can do lot many things on that machine. So it is like taking the entire control of that machine itself. Okay, so that was about the VSFTPD daemon and how will you try to use the exploit. Now, similarly, we also saw that there is something related to MySQL also that is available on this system. MySQL is also installed, right? So let us do a search on MySQL. That is what I have done in my Metasploit to see what are all the different exploits available. As you can see, there are so many, around 29 exploits that are available by default for targeting MySQL. Okay. Let us just see any of these things. Yeah, for example, let's say that there is this 11th item which says MySQL login utility. Okay. So we want to use this exploit. Okay. Okay. Now, okay, before that, it will give a description of what this exploit will try to do. It will try to log in to MySQL using some mechanisms. right? So that is what this exploit will try to do, because in a database, once you get an access using the username or password, then again you can do many kind of functionalities. You can query some sensitive information. If the credit card information or some sensitive information is available in the database, you can just read that information. Or if you want to modify some information, even that could be possible, right? So for that, you will have to log in to the database. So the database username and password will be different system username and password, right? Now, okay, so we have made use of this exploit now. And if you say show options, then there are so many options available for this particular exploit. So here, let us just see some of the important options. Now it says blank passwords, and the current setting is false. It says it will try to see if there are blank passwords for all the users on the system. Now, by default, whenever you install MySQL, MySQL server will be installed with a blank password. So it is the responsibility of the database administrator to set a password for the MySQL root account. Okay, many of the novice users will often ignore this point and they will not be aware of this point. So if such a thing is available, then how do I hack into that system? So let us set this blank passwords to true. Okay, now we have set the blank passwords option to true, and like what we did with the previous exploit also, we have to set the remote host that we want to target. We will again mention the same thing, 192.168. I think it was 56.101.
0 1 0
Yeah, it was 56.101. Right? Now, there are many other options also. You can see, you can set the user file, a file containing the usernames one per line, which means to say that what are all the possible usernames that have to be checked in this MySQL instance. Then user as pass. Try the username as the password for all the users. This also, many of the users have this tendency. Whatever is the username, they will maintain that itself as the password also. So if that kind of weakness is there, you can check for those things also. And then you can also specify a file which will contain all the passwords one per line. Very similar to the password database files that we saw. You can supply the password file so that it will do a brute force search based on these passwords. Okay, now we have set the blank password to be true, and then our host to be this machine, and we'll just have to say run. Okay. Yeah, so invalid credentials can't be blank. So it says username cannot be blank. So let us set the username to be root. we are interested with the root user. Yeah. So as you can see, the exploit says that the remote MySQL version has been found as this particular thing. And then with the current exploit, it is successfully able to log in for the root user with a blank password. Okay, so now let me open. So it is telling that I'm able to log into this machine without supplying any password, right? So now I know that there is one account already on this machine, MySQL account, which can be opened without supplying any password. So I'll say MySQL -u root. I want to connect as root user onto this machine 192.168.56.101, right? See, without supplying any password, it logged in. So I'm able to get the MySQL prompt as it is, right? So this is again like getting the root prompt at the command shell. So you can do whatever you want with the database as of now. I can list all the databases. I can see what are all the tables available. See, these are all the different databases available. So if I want to change to a particular database, then see all the tables, see how the tables are arranged. All these things can be done. Okay. So as you can see, there is one table called as credit cards. So just for the sake of demonstration, now let's see. Okay, so this table is having these different fields. CCID, probably which stands for credit card ID with an integer, then the credit card number itself, then CCV, probably which will indicate the CVV value in the credit card, and then the expiration date. So all of this is stored in this particular table. So I can just see all the information. Okay, so like this, you can steal the entire credit card database from any of the targeted machine as such. Right. So once you gain access to any of the components as the user, the root user or the root account, then you will have many possibilities through which you can attack the system. Right. Okay. Okay, so this is how you can make use of the Metasploit framework for gaining access to the system, for actually to see if you can gain access to any of the systems that you want, or the system itself can be used for hacking the other systems. Okay, so the same framework can also be used by the hackers for hacking different systems. So as a ethical hacker, you can use this for penetration testing, whereas the hackers themselves can also make use of this tool for accessing the for hacking the system and gaining access into any of these systems itself. Okay, So with this, I will complete this demo. So hopefully you have got an idea now on how the penetration testing happens and how the different tools could be used for gaining access to these systems.